Mic is green. Let me check the audio. Testing. 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 All right, cool. All right. So today, and actually, I tried this. I was going to try to do this without my glasses, but I realized I cannot see the chat without them, so I'm probably going to have to wear them anyway. I was hoping the glasses would stop the, well, not wearing my glasses would stop the glare. We could also at the same time. You're funny. Yeah. So I was actually going to try to do this without my glasses to see if it stopped that glare that just picked up. And actually, I don't think it will. It still glares. That's something I'll figure out later. But yeah, I can't read the chat without these, so we're going to wear them today. We're going to be tackling several cutting boards, and we have a whole stack of ash right here. And that's from milling up all the wood for these doors. But before I continue on that, I have a farmer's market or like a fair to go to on Sunday. So my goal is to make up a bunch of cutting boards. And ash is a fairly boring type of hardwood. You know, it's fairly light colored. So my game plan is to add in a bunch of walnut. And again, these boards look fairly dirty right now, but I can actually give you guys a close-up of what walnut looks like after it's been planed. We have some walnut and rosewood stacked over here on top of the planer. But again, this same dirty board right here, that piece, once it's ran through the planer, again, that looks like a piece of junk. Once ran through the planer, it is beautiful walnut. You know, we're going to be making various walnut strips and kind of inlaying that with a bunch of ash. I do have a couple pieces of mahogany laying around the shop that I might kind of intermix. The one thing I do kind of find that sucks, I have a bunch of mahogany strips, but they're all about 3/4 inches thick. And I plan to make these cutting boards thicker, probably about 1.5 inches, because I have a bunch of 8/4 mahogany. 8/4 ash. But again, those thinner strips that I have laying around the shop probably won't get used in this project just because they're too thin. But before we head to the jointer, we're doing some glue ups. Some of these pieces are a little too wide for the jointer, like this piece here. So I'm going to rip down a couple of these and then we'll head straight to the jointer. Probably won't spend too long over there just to get everything kind of milled up before we do the glue ups. And because we are doing a live stream, I think I got max about 2.5 hours before my phone dies. So we're going to try to join enough material to start a couple glue ups, get the glue ups going, then go back to milling, kind of bounce back and forth between the two is the game plan that I have for the evening. So anything that's over 6 inches, which is this piece, where's the tape? Then this piece is over 6. So I'll rip down a couple of these. That's 9, and I plan to make these at least 1.5 inches. So I can get a maximum of theoretically 6 pieces out of a 9-inch piece, but the blade itself is 1/8 of an inch. So I will probably cut this piece to 4.5. And take this one to 5. So yeah, we better mill down a couple of these, rip down a couple of these pieces, head to the jointer just to get nice and clean edges before we go through all of our glue ups. And I will say that this is stacked a little too high for my comfort zone. It would really suck if a piece fell over onto the blade while she is spinning. And we want 4.5. Because this one was 6. So we'll go. I might just rip 1.5 inches off of this one. I'll just rip it in half. I'll just go to 3. Where did I put my headphones? That glare really gets on my nerves. If anybody in the comments or in the chat actually knows anything about filmography, I probably need a lens. I'm using a Google Samsung S24, I think. I didn't clean the lens. It's probably a part of it. And the saw. These are plugged in before I get started. That looks like red oak. All right, let's sit with the table sawing. And let me check and make sure the chats are working. Okay, they are. Just wanted to make sure they were still popping up. All right, that's it for the table saw for right now. We're going to go over to the jointer and get a couple of good glue edges. And And actually, wood like this that looks really rough. I love running the stuff like this through the jointer because this is going to be a great example of how wood goes from looking rough to being pretty. This is the edge that we just ripped. Okay, I can't really quite tell how drastic it is. But again, this looks really dirty. The first pass to the jointer, you guys will be able to see how pretty it looks. So again, wood that most people will burn, toss in the trash. I love being able to transform it into something usable. And then as far as all the ash that we have, again, they're 1.5 inches thick, but we still have saw marks and everything else. So this isn't quite good enough for a glue surface. And neither is this rough side. If it'll show how rough it is. Yeah, some of these are still rough. So we need to joint this edge and then rip this side clean. I might run it through the planer. We'll decide. But the goal is to get a bunch of good glue surfaces so I can rip up and kind of laminate these pieces. The ash, I do have a bunch of pieces that are probably like 2 by 2. So I'm thinking the cutting boards will probably be large sections of ash with an inlay of walnut, probably every couple strips or something like that. So these will be like black and white cutting boards for the most part because I have more walnut and ash. I don't have any. I do have a few pieces of mahogany to kind of add a little bit of a red in the mix. But again, I'm kind of constricted by the wood that I have on hand. And time. Time is a big factor into what I can actually accomplish tonight. Let's see, joint is plugged up. Let's set the fence wide enough for like 6 inches. All right. Let's get going. And what I'm going to do is everything that I need to joint the faces of all these wider boards. Let me stack those over here so I know where I'm pulling from. And again, these are fairly flat, so it shouldn't take too many passes on these. And for the really rough ones, I'm going to try to show you a before and after the passes. And actually, this is a great example. You see that gap right there? This board at the bottom has a cup, like a smiley face. The goal of the jointer is to take that cup out of the board and make it nice and flat. So we'll start with this piece. So again, rough and ugly, not pretty. Probably wouldn't want to build a chair out of this or a bed frame. In a few passes, that's all it works. And with the first pass, because again we told you it had that arch in it, it only took a snag, pass on this edge and this edge. And it's going to keep doing that and eventually took the shaving all the way across the front. And I better show you what this board actually looks like. Again, from a piece of garbage, a couple passes, and I will say those new joiner knives are amazing. That gloss, that little glare, that's silky smooth. From a rough piece. So we're gonna joint up the walnut that we need to take care of, and then we're gonna go right into ripping everything. So we go into our first couple of glue ups. And actually, I have a piece of rosewood. This piece. I don't know what it is. I think it's rosewood. So I'm gonna take a pass on it. I won't really. Again, I've never worked with rosewood, but I think that's what this is. So let's take a pass and see what it looks like. You know, I actually wasn't expecting that. I don't know what this is. It almost looks like zebra wood. But again, I am no specialist. But also, you can see right here where it hadn't taken the pass yet. Again, meaning that the board isn't flat. This part is lower than the rest of the surface. But again, that actually looks really good. I almost don't even want to use this for a cutting board. I might save this for something else. And again, that corner got even smaller. And again, we're going to keep taking passes until we pretty much go across the whole entire wall. That's one thing I can say. Again, the milling the last few days has all been ash. It's not really too much to reveal. They're a light colored wood, but I love milling up like exotics. It's really amazing. It's always nice to see that transformation and that color kind of pop through. Again, really ugly piece of walnut. One problem again, these boards, most of the scraps I have laying around my shop are 3/4. So I can't do a cutting board that's mainly walnut strictly because all my ash is 2 inches. So if I was to take a piece of ash and glue it to the side, you know, it'd be a really thin. Well, this is significantly thinner than that is. So I'm going to end up cutting all these into strips, the same thickness as the ash, and we're going to have a bunch of strips. I could mill the ash down to 3/4, but then I'm just going to be turning a lot of it into sawdust. And I'm not going to go into like resawing all the ash to 3/4 so I can make about 3/4 cutting boards. Ideally, I do make some 3/4 cutting boards. I try to keep them though at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So I could make a bunch of really skinny ones, but most people want at least a significantly thicker cutting board. Just feels higher quality and whatnot. So I'm not going to take the time to try to turn all that ash, that's the majority of the one I'm working with, into 3/4. And I don't think I'm going to do any end-grain cutting boards strictly for time. I just noticed I made a mistake. I hadn't locked the wheels to the jointer yet. Definitely want to lock the wheels down to make sure it doesn't move as you're pushing on it. That wouldn't be a good thing. walnut. This is a piece of mahogany. I actually already have this milled up. I don't need to run this through the planer. I mean, joints it. I actually don't have as much walnut as I thought I did. Oh, no, I said that much. I have a bunch of red oak laying around the shop, but red oak is pretty similar to ash as far as color. I wouldn't want to add a bunch of that to these. I want to use, scrap to actually add contrast. Something that make them look interesting. This is the one I thought was walnut. I'm gonna run this through the planer and see what we actually get. So I'm not sure. It looks brown, but then when I rip this edge, it's almost looks like red oak. So we'll see what we get when we run it through the joints. I would guess red oak. This very well, this might be mahogany. That might be mahogany. So that I did a whole door out of mahogany. I have a bunch of mahogany laying around. And that looks to be the same. But again, no expert. This is just based off me judging, the scraps laying around my shop. Yeah, I'm almost 100% sure that's mahogany. I'll say about 75, 80. I never jointed anything less than like 3/4. I would be terrifying to be feeding people jointer, and the jointer knives like snap the board and forbid, and now my hands are going straight into the nails. So, but hey, it actually went alright. So. I know you're not supposed to go below 1/4 of an inch. Then you can't join anything less than 1/4. These are about 1/2 inch, so I guess they're fine. because again, it's not that much mass above the blade. But that actually went all right. So that's all of our fancy hardwoods. I do need to join a couple pieces of this ash. I'm going to move the fence in, if nothing else. We'll get some edge joints to do. We have no more wide boards. It's going to be, the end of the wall with other boards. So we're going to bring the fence into about like 2 inches, give or take. And the reason why you do that typically just for safety, less blade exposed, less likely to, hit your hand on the blade. And also, whenever I joint things this small, I typically don't use the push paddles. I like to actually have my hands directly on the material. I ain't gonna say whether that's safer or not. I definitely don't use it for any edge jointing, so to each his own. Don't do anything beyond what you feel comfortable with. But while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and joint the face and an edge. So this side I just put down. I'm going to take one more. Then I'm going to take that same face that we just jointed, put it up against the fence. Oh, that should take another pass. Now we're going to take that same face, put it up against the fence. Take a couple quick passes. I know that these two are my clean edges. I'm not going to do them all right now. The goal is just to get up enough so I can actually go into some glue ups. Because again, I don't think I have the time to get into doing all these. And if the glue takes time to dry, I figure get enough going. I can come back to everything else. Hey, how you doing, Big Jury Man?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in.
Let's see. I think I've milled up a good at this point. Probably do want to mill up some of these thin strips. I still have it. I think after this piece, I'm going to head to the table saw and we go into our. Oh, I didn't joint the edges of all those other boards for the walnut. Crap. Well, let me actually move this stuff out the way. That's over there. And I'll fire the jointer back up for those. And I do need to do a couple of these thinner strips. And then edge joint all of those. I think for now, actually, I'm just going to put all of this over here on top of the door material. And if I have time to make extra cutting boards, that's what I'll do with all of this. All that can go over there. What we gotten done so far, let me show you guys that before we continue on with the jointing. We have various pieces of walnut and mahogany all jointed on the faces. The faces jointed. We still need to join an edge. And then we can go into ripping these for our cutting boards. And then we have a bunch of ash. Most of these are, again, about 2x2s as far as, dimensions. And then I have a couple of, I guess 1x2s, essentially, probably about 1 inch thick, about 2 inches wide. So I'm going to joint and do all these and then edge joint all these. And then we're going to switch over to ripping stuff on the table saw. We'll do our first couple of glue ups. So I can kind of let those dry before I go back to the planer. And then we'll decide if we have time to actually mill up the rest of those ash boards while everything else is drying. I think I'm starting to get a cold. My throat is killing me. Let me make sure the chats are still working. I haven't seen anything in a minute. Okay, we should have caught up. Phew. These are getting a little skinny though. Do I want to do this with just my hand? That'll be fine.
I missed you joining in. Hope you're having a great day. Oh, like that.
That is it for the jointing, or at least a little bit. I was just going to go straight to the table saw, but some of these pieces of walnut and stuff would be easier if I plane them now. So I'm going to run a couple of those through the planer. In hindsight, I definitely wish I put bigger wheels on my planer. This garage floor isn't the smoothest, so she doesn't slide as nicely as I want her to. There we go. I'll slide you over and out of the way. Okay. Let's make sure I'm still on camera. Cool. So yeah, I'm planning to rip a lot of these to about 1.5 inches, give or take. So this side is perfectly fine for glue ups. This side is a little rough. And I could rip them all to 1.5-inch strips. And then once they're 1.5-inch strips, run them back through the table saw to kind of clean up this face. But I mean, a single pass through the planer would do it since this side is already jointed. So I'm going to run everything on the opposite face through the jointer, probably including the 1.5-inch strips of ash. Just to make sure we have a bunch of good glue joints. And one thing I was slightly concerned about, because I finally have all this ash for the doors to the same thickness. Once I crank down the head, that's no longer going to be set anymore. But all of them being at the same thickness, I can always just reset the planer. I'm not at my final 1 3/8, so it won't be too big of a deal to figure out exactly where I am. Let's get this part over with. Most of them should be about the same thickness. I can just grab one of these, bring it up to the planer, head. Take the bite. So these I'm also sending these through the planer to get a third side flat instead of going through the table saw. Get better desk function. So let's set this up. was noisy for a good little bit. Let's bring you guys back here. And we're going to rip up some of these strips so we can start gluing up our cutting boards. So what I want to do first is separate all this ash and get all that over here. Everything at this point has 3 clean edges, or a face, well, 2 faces and 1 edge. But in the case of all the walnut and everything else, these are going to be ripped to strips that are roughly, let's see, most of these pieces of ash are 1 7/8 by 1 3/4, 1 5, 1 3, 1 7. So then I'm gonna take everything down to probably 1 3/4. I might just go 1 1/2. Or everything's gonna be going through the planer. These are gonna go 1 1/2. These are probably gonna get trimmed up to 1 3/4. I might take them all to 1 3/4. All right, let's see how many strips we can get out of the prettier wood, and then I'll kind of dictate how I'll do the rest of these cutting boards. Hair protection. I was originally planning on 1 1/2, though. I probably should just keep it at that. Yeah. Other kind of look is
get you guys to join in.
All right, we actually have a ton of strips of various hardwoods over here. And unfortunately, like always, in my attempt to get rid of a bunch of my scraps, I make a bunch of scraps that I am not going to get rid of. So these will go into future cutting boards. These are just, again, smaller than 1.5 inches. So if I decide to make some 3/4 inch cutting boards, these will get used then. Let's get this off to the side because, again, I could go ahead and burn all this. But even if I was to hypothetically just glue these same strips together and just send them all through the planer. That's about 7 inches. So if I was to cut this in half and fold these back in on itself, this would be enough for a cutting board. So instead of tossing this, I have other 3/4 inch and 1 inch thick strips, several pieces just like this that will make great cutting boards. So I will put these aside and hopefully don't move them 30 times before I actually get a chance to use them. These I will throw into my trash bin because I'm responsible. All right, and then in the case of these, how thick are these? Actually, I think I should go ahead and rip these because thickness wise, I want these to be about as tall as these. So I need to take these down to like 1.5 inches. And each one of these has 3 good faces. If I rip that to 1.5 inches and turn it, or I can rip it 1.5 inches this way. But then I have to rip this side too. I only plan to rip one side. I'm not doing a whole bunch of extra ripping. So yeah, we're gonna rip all these one time. And we're gonna set that for 1.5 inches. I probably should move that whole stack of scraps out of my way. Not scraps, but strips. I'm gonna do the handy dandy bump method. And then I'm going to rip up all these pieces of ash and we can go into our first glue up for our cutting boards. Where is it? Wait a minute. That's one thing I just recently put the time in to mount my Delta table saw onto this beautiful cabinet here and did the extension wings and the router table. But I would love a 3 or 5 horsepower table saw to where it doesn't have that issue, as it's the power to cut all the way through. But part of the reason why, you guys probably can't tell, the board is pinching down at the end. Again, whenever you resaw something, it's typically tension. Pretty much the board is touching down there, but there's a whole gap right here. So the board is pinching down at that end.
I might actually just move this lady table saw.
I will say that is the one disappointment with this table saw. It's not the first time she's lost power to her. And again, that electrician probably gonna be upgrading saws at some point because that's annoying. It's not even like I was ripping a bunch of material. I'll deal with that later. Either she got hot, I hit the reset button, flip the breaker, still no juice. I'll deal with that at another time. I think we have enough pieces ripped up for me to go into a glue up. But I did want to rip these to 1.5 inches. Fuck. I don't feel like climbing back down there. I can try to push the button once again to see if that does anything. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Climbing down there sucks. I have like just enough room to reach my hand in there. I wish I can get it from the back side. Can I? And I can. I'll learn something new without having to crawl up under there. Okay, can I reach it? There it is. Yeah, that don't seem to do nothing. It's not even clicking. So I'll assume the motor is having a hissy fit today. We'll leave that alone. So what we have here There's several strips of various types of hardwood, and I have to decide on how I want to arrange them to make a pretty cutting board. Actually, let me separate all the types of wood that I have so I know what I'm working with. Mahogany. The ash is going to be the mainstay of each one of these cutting boards, or the majority of it. And then it's going to have, walnut, mahogany, etc. as accents. Walnut, ash, ash, and ash. So let's see, how long are these? So I cut these down. These are 52 inches, and most of my other strips are not that long. This one's like 28. So these pieces are like 28. So what I'll probably do, 28 and 28 is 56. These are about 56. This one's 52. That becomes one of the problems when you're dealing with scraps. You kind of want to be able to use every bit of it, but it doesn't always work out that way. And for these cutting boards, I'm probably going to make them like 14 by 11 or something. Let's see. So in ash, we have a total of 10 inches. Yeah, I need to go in and cut these smaller. So I'm thinking I'm going to go 28. Right, 28. Yeah, so let's go to the miter saw. I'll set up a stop block at 28, and then I'll start gluing stuff up. Grab one of these pieces. Let's say 28. We'll go a little under. Let's go 28. Bring that to the miter saw. And then we'll grab my flip stop, slide it over, flip her down. Bring her up to the materials and lock her down. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. We're currently making some cutting boards. We have a bunch of ash, walnut, mahogany, and a couple different mystery species. to roughly 28. Anything else that looks too long, these can get cut. Everything else should be about 20 inches. One thing I do need to do is I didn't plane these. So that glue edge is no good. I'm about to send these to the planer real quick, and then we can go into glue ups. I forgot. All right. Whew. So now I can line up several cutting boards. So yeah, in ash we have, where's my tape? $19. Let's just say again, in the ash cutting board, we take and we slap a piece of walnut right there, and grab a piece of mahogany, and we'll double the mahogany and walnut up next to each other. And let's grab a piece of whatever this is, and we'll brand this off on the very outside. And that piece right there, that is a 9-inch cutting board. So let's throw a few more pieces of let's grab some mahogany. That's 11. I don't like double mahogany on the outside. Let's say a piece of walnut. That's 11. I want to add at least one more piece of something. So this mystery piece in the middle, I'll probably sandwich it with walnut on both sides. This is 11 3/4, and the shortest piece is 24. So that would only give me one cutting board. me take out this 24-inch piece and put one of these longer ones in there. And now the shortest piece in this whole assembly is 28. So I can have like some 11 by 14s. These are again for like a fair. So I'm not really trying to make giant cutting boards. Just want to make some that are semi-decent. So that can make 2 fairly thick cutting boards. And we'll come over here and I'll probably be able to get like another 2. Let's grab a piece of mahogany, and let's on the outside do double mahogany, and do walnut around a piece of ash in the middle, or I can take and do walnut. And then there's that 3 sections of ash in the middle. That's like 12 inches, so I might take this out and then drop 2 pieces of mahogany and walnut right there in the middle. That's 12. That's 4 cutting boards. And then with what I got left, again, we didn't get to rip up or do all the pieces. How many more will I be able to do before the actual event? I don't know. But double mahogany in the middle. I will use this piece of walnut, but there's a big old crack right here. And I can snap that without too much of an effort. So I'm not going to use this piece. These pieces are good to go. Let's see, how wide is this? That's 10. How long? I think this one is the one that's 14. 24. So yeah, I can only get one. But if I cut this to, let's say, 12 inches wide, I guess I don't need to use any of my longer pieces. I'll probably cut this a little bit shorter. Somewhere up in there. Cut that one somewhere right there. And then we'll throw 1 piece of walnut on the very outside. So I'm not really sure, because again, this one will be a 24 by 12. So this will be my biggest cutting board. So there'll be 5 of them. I wish I can cut this one in half though. Probably won't be able to. And again, this is just for me grabbing various scraps from around the shop and all the leftovers from ripping down some of the ash so it can fit through the planer. But 4 or 5 cutting boards. I currently have 2 already made. So when I go to the fair, it's not going to showing up with nothing already. And I have a bunch of coasters too. So I'll be able to show up with like 7 cutting boards. And if I have more time tomorrow, I might be able to make a few more. Because, I mean, just gluing them up is kind of step one. I still got to send these back through the planer. Probably route in the juice groove, route in the handle, and then I need to brand them. So that will probably be tomorrow. If I am lucky, I might be able to glue up maybe like another 4 or 5 more, because I still do have a bunch of scraps that, again, won't get thrown away, but can make cutting boards. So I will decide on what I do with these afterwards. Can I get one more? I might be able to get one more. I didn't get a chance to rip these to 1.5 inches, but the planer could take care of it, so I could cut this to make up a few more. This one has too much rough edge on it. That's only 8, but if I cut these 2 in half, this is only 20 inches. So if I cut these 3 to 20 inches, I'll get 3 more pieces. Let me cut these real quick. Let's see, what's that? That's 9 1/4. That's 10. Do I have another strip to throw in there? So that will give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cutting boards with, again, the scraps that I had laying around the shop. And there's still more that can be made. And let me show you guys kind of what they'll look like. It's not really exact because these haven't been planed down. But once they get planed and glued and they're all the same thickness, you'll have a walnut, mystery wood, ash, mahogany, walnut, walnut, ash, walnut. So there's various mixes of the hardwoods. I think these are going to make some pretty cutting boards. All right, let's get some clamps ready. I start spreading some glue. Damn it, all my clamps are behind all the wood for these doors, and they're not super easy to get to. Okay. Do this without falling. Let's grab 1, 2. 3 and 4. Let's grab a couple of these. This is the first time I've regretted putting all my clamps on doors, on the doors, because a little bit of a pain in the ass to reach them. But I got them. Now I get down without a fall or knocking down a bunch of stuff. Whew. There we go. So what I want to do is move these off to the side. Definitely need to clean these clamps again. See, at that point. Where's my glue brush? There we go. And I probably can get you guys just a little bit closer. I'll grab a couple of these. All right, let's start spreading glue. I'm gonna roll them all up this way. All right. Let's spread some glue. It's a bit much glue. It'll be all right. Okay, I already flipped those. I almost messed up. You want to make sure that you do have everything covered, though. And I like to try to keep this as flush as I can toward the bottom, just to alleviate me having to cut off a bunch later on. Try to maximize the length of the overall cutting boards that you get at the end of your glue ups. All right. This is one think I want to put one more small clamp right there. All right, last one. Phew. And let's see for the next one. Also, one of the benefits to having a bench top with melamine is the glue pops right up off. This dries while we're still streaming. I'll show you guys how easy it is to pop it off. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. That's another thing too. I'm not really too artistic, but I think this looks good. You know, somebody else with a better vision might say, "Oh, we should, have it all ash and just have like a strip of walnut." Or, I'm not a designer. It's not one of my skill sets that I'm too good at. We'll flip this side around to there. And what I'm doing is anything that has like a little messed up end like that, just put it on down to that end. So that way when I flush up this side, we should be good to go just to do a quick trim. Let's see, get that one about there. That one needs to be something like that. Let's see, I think I'm going 14. How big is a 14-inch cutting board? See, this one is 11 1/4 by 12. I guess I can do small cutting boards. I forgot. This one's like 11 1/4 by 12. It's not huge, but it looks pretty good. It has the recessed handles here to grab it. You have the juice groove and my logo and everything else on the back side. New World Carpentry. So I guess if they did have to be smaller, I could do a 12 by 12. We'll see. I might be able to get more cutting boards out of these than I thought. And again, this is for a farmer's market. I don't know what most people are going to want to spend when I get there. Typically for like a custom cutting board for me, I'm anywhere between $120 to $150 for a simple face grain. And once you get into end grains and everything else, the price just goes up. If I'm doing like a special pattern or like one of the 3D designs, those cutting boards just keep going up and up. So I don't want to make anything super expensive when I go there. But again, these are going to be at least 1.5 inches thick, face grain cutting boards with various hardwoods. I want to say at least $100 per cutting board. So I don't want to put too much effort into it. I'm debating if I'm even going to go juice grooves. I might not, again, because I might have a couple with juice grooves, but I don't think I'm going to juice groove everything because, again, I want to have a range to offer people. And I might make a couple 3/4 inch cutting boards just so I can have some cheaper $50 and $70 cutting boards, $60 cutting boards for those who don't want to spend the excess of money. Got to have options if you plan to make sales. Flip that over. All right. Then I got to go to work in the morning. I'm doing a garage renovation, conversion. Turning the garage into a bathroom and a den area. So I have some handrails to put in, some pickets, some baseboard. I'm working for another builder yet again who wants me to put in baseboard before the LVP. I'd much rather be here in the shop doing things that make sense. I try to tell them too, it makes no sense. Like, why put in baseboard before LVP? Just makes the install harder. And not with me, but I see other people all the time when they do that, they have problems notching around doorways and then they get terrible gaps. It's just more work to notch around doorways when you're dealing with baseboard as well. Again, not an issue for me. It's just more work. And if I'm the one that's doing the baseboard and the flooring, why not let me install it how I want to? It's not like you have two different trades coming in that, are affecting each other. Yeah, just one of the reasons why I love shop work more than the stuff I got to do on the job site. Things inside of the shop I can plan and make sure they actually make sense before I go into the work versus on the job site, I'm dealing with homeowners, other tradesmen. If there's a GC involved, the GC as well. In the shop, everything makes sense. I'm sorry if I'm rambling too. It's about like 12 o'clock right about now. I am a little tired. But again, I do want to say I appreciate everybody who's hung out with me today. A little bit of change of pace from the doors. Matter of fact, the guy I'm building the doors for, I got to build him something. He's getting 10 doors. I think the cutting board is a little too simple of a gift. I don't know. I might make him like a nightstand or something. And that is 2, well, 4. There we go. That right there, we'll do 4 sets of cutting boards. And what was this one? I think the shortest piece here was 24. And this is over 12. So if I had to, I could make some 12 by 12. So I probably can still get 2 out of this one. Actually, let me check my phone battery. Make sure my phone isn't about to die on you guys. Wow, somehow I'm still at like 34%. Typically, my streams don't last longer than like 2.5 hours before the phone dies. But it looks like we might actually be able to make it to the end of at least all these glue ups. And that'll probably be where we call it for the night. And then tomorrow, when I get back from work, I can run all these through the planer, juice groove them, and put finishes on them on the live stream tomorrow. I might be able to, get the table saw back up and running and probably rip up some more material to do like another 4 or 5. And then that'll probably be it for tomorrow. And then Sunday I can go give these out. And then when I get back Sunday evening, I'll be back to doing the doors. Looks and feels like I need to refill my glue bottle. Sounds like the neighbor's dog is being attacked by a raccoon out there. And I have a bit of an idea what I'm going to do with that little extra piece. So I think I'm going to again, this one at the shortest piece is about 24 inches. So I could very well make a handle out of this piece right here, make one of these a charcuterie board. So I'm going to make sure this edge right here is nice and clamped together. All right, one more to do. I need to refill the glue before I do that one. All right. I think by this point, I've actually used up most of my clamps. Probably can do the same thing here. And make a handle. Might be able to get 2 boards out of this one. And there we go. Ouch, I bit my lip. I'll probably throw my clamp right here just in case. Whew. And just like that, a bunch of scraps in the shop are now going to be turned into a series of cutting boards. I should be able to get like 6 or 8 of them, maybe 2 charcuterie boards out of these blanks. Oops, didn't mean to hit the camera. Out of these blanks over here. So tomorrow morning, I'll probably go into taking them out of clamps, and then I can get into planing them and everything else when I get back from work. But that's that. And all those pieces again came from various scraps laying around the shop, small pieces from off rips, various pieces of rips from the ash. And we still have a ton of scraps here. This whole section right here up top is scraps. And then I have a whole bunch of skinny strips inside of the bin and several more over here. So I can probably make up a cutting boards tomorrow. But that'll be it for the night. I greatly appreciate everybody who's tagged along with me throughout the stream. If you guys have enjoyed, make sure you guys check out my other channels on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all under New World Carpentry or New World Carpentry Solutions. I try to upload daily on all platforms. So I really appreciate you guys. And if you guys have enjoyed, smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.